Welcome to the News Review on Press TV. Russian President Vladimir Putin has approved a document naming the creation and deployment of anti-missile and strike weapons in space as one of the main military threats to his country. The document, which has been published online, outlines Russia's policy on its nuclear deterrent. Russia is concerned about a U.S. and NATO's attempt to militarize outer space and has called for the need to develop modern military space systems. This after U.S. President Donald Trump came up with the idea of developing another military branch, calling it a Space Force. The two powers have been at odds ever since the U.S. pulled out of the Intermediate Nuclear Treaty, known as the INF, in August last year. Now let's discuss this a little bit and get some insights. So joining me will be Marcus Papadopoulos, editor of the Politics First from London, and also Tony Gosling, investigative journalist, joining us from Bristol. Great to see you, gentlemen. Let's go to London to Marcus. Marcus, the U.S. already has a huge, let's say, military budget, and it's dealing with COVID-19. As you know, there is a high unemployment rate. Now we have protest rallies that have been going on. And now it's talking about militarizing the space. What's in it for U.S.?
Well, the world is in the midst of an arms race between America and Russia, an arms race which is taking the form of conventional weapons and also nuclear weapons. And in regard to the latter category, nuclear weapons on land, at sea, and in the air. And the Americans are intent on opening a new front as regards the nuclear weapons risk by militarizing space. Now, the Americans, ever since the dissolution of the Soviet Union, have been taking steps to first safeguard their global supremacy, and second, taking steps to ensure that Russia can never again challenge American hegemony in the world. And in the last few years, the Americans have intensified their efforts to both defend their global hegemony and to keep Russia down. Why? Because in 2020, Russia is again a superpower. Not a superpower in the same way as the former Soviet Union was, but nonetheless a superpower. And that is why there is an arms race in the world today. This arms race has been brought about by American actions. And whilst the Americans are developing new nuclear weapons, new missiles, for example, on land and at sea, the Russians, naturally, have taken similar actions and are also developing new cruise missiles, new hypersonic missiles, drones, which can deliver nuclear warheads both in the air and at sea. So it is a very, very dangerous state of affairs, because when the world's two superpowers, America and Russia, are facing each other in a confrontational manner, and when both of them are engaged in an arms race, that is hardly conducive for global peace, security, and stability. But nonetheless, Russia has every right to defend its national security. And what we have seen is a chain reaction, or action-reaction. The Americans in 2002 withdrew from the ABM Treaty. That paved the way for the Americans to develop a missile system in Eastern Europe, components of which are in Poland and Romania. That missile system is not actually aimed at missiles from Iran or North Korea. No, the missile system is aimed at neutralizing the Russian strategic nuclear deterrent. Right. And then the Americans withdrew from the INF Treaty. Why did the Americans withdraw from the INF Treaty? Firstly, that enables the Americans to make the missile defense system in Eastern Europe also an offensive system. And second, it enables the Americans to deploy short to medium range ballistic missiles in Europe, which have been previously prohibited under the INF Treaty.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, let me go to Bristol to Tony. Tony, let's look at the Russian side of the story. President Putin calling this a major military threat to Russia. So an arms race could be the name of the game, as we're talking about. And how is this going to make the world a better place? What about peace and security?
Well, it's certainly very important that Russia is able to counter the moves being made around the world by the United States. And Marcus is absolutely right. The US has made all the running in this. It's taken the initiative in this new Cold War, and they seem to be wanting to take on the world, don't they? They're going to take on the Chinese too, as if that's feasible. Now, look, let's just look at what happened here in the 1990s. There was the rape of Russia. The idea was, with these oligarchs who were trained in Switzerland, by the way, came over to Russia, and they wanted to sell off the entire country to the rest of the world's stock markets. The only thing, Putin, who turned up in 2000, wasn't part of the plan. And what he's done is he's turned the tables on the West, and he's turned Russia back into an independent nation, giving it back its dignity. And this is part of that. What's been going on with the missile defence system, Marcus is right about Poland, he's right about Romania, which is the latest one in this missile defence system, but there's also the Baltic states as well have also got this missile defence system, and it is laughable. Honestly, there should be a comedy show about this. The idea that America has got to defend itself by placing missiles in Latvia, Lithuania, Romania and Poland is beyond a joke. Of course they're not defensive. This is an offensive move. The chess pieces are being placed by the United States right next to the Russian border, and there's actually a history of this in Europe because we've had many, many decades of the Americans trying to base nuclear weapons here in Britain and in other countries in Europe to then threaten the old Soviet Union with. And there was enormous trouble because of that, because everybody knows in Europe that this makes European nations, not America, the target for Russian nuclear weapons. And that, I'm afraid, is not happening very much now. The Americans tend to keep their weapons secret. For example, they still have some, I believe, in Turkey, but many European countries have told the Americans they've got to keep their nukes out of Europe. As a result of all this. And so this is not going to go unnoticed. This is the closest we've come, I think, for many, many years to the real tensions building up. But look, what about the arms companies? They're fueling this. I noticed Lockheed has just employed someone especially to market the missile defence systems that they manufacture to Eastern Europe. So they're seeing this as some kind of sales trip, a bonanza for American business. And the Europeans and much of the rest of the world needs to take a close look at the way the arms industry seems to think that it can just drum up wars to benefit itself. Because, of course, many people say, well, who benefits from a war? Nobody wants a war. The fact of the matter is the arms companies love wars. They want to create as many wars as they can to make as much money as possible.
Money. Exactly, and President Trump is where money is. Thank you for that. Marcus Papadopoulos, editor of the Politics First, joined us from London, and Tony Gosling, investigative journalist, who joined us from Bristol. And that's the end of this edition of the News Review on Press TV.